Brothers, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome in the session. In the last session, we discussed the chapter number 5 from Robert Dahl's famous book on democracy. In this chapter, which is titled as Why Democracy, Robert Dahl discusses the advantages of democracy. So, 10 points. He has discussed 10 advantages of democracy in this chapter. 8 points, 8 advantages were discussed in the last session. Today, we discussed the last two advantages. The ninth advantage, which Robert Dahl discusses, is modern representative democracies do not fight wars with one another. Modern representative democracies do not fight wars with one another. This amazing benefit of democratic governments was totally unexpected. Robert Dahl says this amazing benefit was unexpected. No one predicted this would happen because since the beginning of human civilization, many conscientious people had been had desired that an end to war comes, that there is no war, but it could not be realized. So it is the first time in the human history that there are certain regions in the world where war does not take place, and they are called the zones of peace. Basically, the Western Europe, Scandinavia, and Northern Europe. So it is something marvelous about democracy, and now it has grown into a full-fledged democratic theory of peace. It is called democratic theory of peace, or peace theory of democracy, you can say. So Robert Dahl says it is one of the biggest advantages of democracy. But by the end of the 1900s, the evidence was clear and overwhelming. By the end of the 1900s, this pattern was emerging that democratic states did not invade each other, did not attack each other. Between 1945 and 1989, there were 34 international wars. None of those wars happened between democratic countries. What's more, these countries were not even preparing to fight each other. This is true even if we look before 1945. Well back into the 1800s, countries with proper democratic systems and voting rights for many men did not fight wars with each other. Of course, modern democratic governments have fought wars. They have fought wars with non democratic countries. They have also used military force to rule over conquered people, colonial rule. Democratic countries have colonized foreign nations. Sometimes they have interfered in the politics of other countries. They have even helped weaken or overthrow a weak foreign government. For instance, until the 1980s, the United States often supported military dictatorships in Latin America. In 1954, the US was involved in a military takeover that removed the newly elected government in Guatemala. Still, the fact that modern democracies do not fight wars with each other is amazing. One reason is that modern democracies trade so much with each other. So, international trade, mutual trade is one of the factors that democratic states do not attack each other, do not invade each other, because it will negatively impact upon their trade and economic growth. High levels of international trade encourage them to be friendly instead of fighting. It is also true that democratic citizens and leaders learn how to compromise. It is also true that democratic citizens and leaders learn how to compromise. In fact, the liberal philosophers, the liberal thinkers, they argue that international war is a disease, and there are two cures to this disease. One is international trade, and the second is democracy. They say international trade and democracy is the cure to the disease of war. If we want to bring an end to war from the world history, global history, then we need to promote international trade and democracy all over the world. And it is Robert Dahl says it is also true that democratic citizens and leaders learn how to compromise. In addition, they see people in other democratic countries as less threatening. Democratic people see people in other democratic countries as less threatening. They view them as being more like themselves and more trustworthy. Finally, they have a long history of peaceful talks, treaties, and alliances. They also joined together against non democratic enemies. This history makes them want to seek peace instead of starting wars. Because of all this, a world with more democracies promises to be a more peaceful world. The 10th advantage of democracy, as explained by Robert Dahl. Robert Dahl says countries with democratic governments tend to be more prosperous than countries with non democratic governments, tend to be more prosperous. There may be exceptions, but generally, democratic countries are prosperous. They are richer than non democratic countries. About 200 years ago, most thinkers believed something that is now wrong. 200 years ago, people thought democracy was only suited for people who did not spend much money, who were people who are frugal. Democracy suits them. It was the prevailing thought 200 years ago, 2 centuries ago. People believed that being rich, being affluent, was a sign of monarchies or rule by a few rich people. But the experience of the 1800s and 1900s showed the exact opposite was true. Democracies became wealthy. When compared, countries that were not democratic were generally poor. The link between wealth, affluence, and democracy became very clear in the late 1900s. You know, after World War II, Germany was divided into two parts, West Germany and East Germany. East Germany was socialist under the Soviet occupation, and West Germany was democratic under the occupation of the United States, France, and Britain. And in few decades, West Germany became very rich, very prosperous, and East Germany, which was socialist, it was very poor. Same is the case with South Korea and North Korea. After World War II, North Korea became socialist under the Soviet occupation and Chinese occupation, and South Korea became democratic under the American occupation. And now you see North Korea is very, very poor, and South Korea is very, very rich in among Asian countries. So the link between wealth and democracy became very clear in the late 1900s. The reason is partly because modern democracy works well with the market economy. Market economy It promotes competition, and competition means the companies, the business people, they have to produce things and services at a lower cost, and they have to provide good quality services, good quality things in the minimum cost. So it leads to efficiency, competition among companies, competition among people, among individuals, among business people. It leads to excellence. It leads to more and more productivity. So it leads to prosperity and affluence. So this is the main strength of capitalist system. In a market economy, business rules are usually not too strict. People have economic freedoms, economic choices. Workers are free to move between different jobs. People can choose their profession. Private companies compete strongly to sell their goods so that they earn more profits. And in order to earn more profits, they have to be innovative. They have to be innovative so that they spend less and produce good things at a minimum cost. Customers can choose from many products offered by these competing companies. By the end of the 1900s, not every country with a market economy was democratic, but every single democratic country did have a market economy by the 1900s. For the last 2 centuries, the market economy has usually created more wealth than any other system. Because of this, the old idea about government and money has been flipped upside down. All modern democratic countries have market economies. A country with a market economy is very likely to prosper. Therefore, a modern democratic country is also likely to be a rich country. Democracies usually have more economic advantages than most non democratic systems. Democracies usually have more economic advantages than most non democratic systems. For one thing, democratic countries encourage the education of their people. Education flourishes, spreads in the democratic setups. A well educated workforce helps greatly with new ideas, innovation, and economic growth. Also, the rule of law is usually stronger in democracies. The courts are more independent. Property rights are more secure for citizens. Business agreements, contractual agreements are enforced more effectively. The government and politicians are less likely to step in and stop economic life without reason. Finally, modern economies depend on good communication. So these are the factors, basic factors, which promote economic growth and prosperity in capitalist democratic states. In democratic countries, the obstacles to communication are much lower. It is easier and much less dangerous to look for and share information than in most non democratic countries. In short, there are a few exceptions, but we can make a general conclusion. Modern democratic countries are better for business. They provide a good place for a market economy to work. This helps them achieve economic growth more easily than non democratic systems. This link between modern democracy and a market economy is good for both. So, modern democracy helps market economy, and market economy helps democracy. Both promote each other. In spite of its flaws, however, we must never lose sight of the benefits that make democracy more desirable than any feasible alternative to it. Although democracy has flaws, although democracy has problems, but we should never lose sight of the benefits that make democracy more desirable. So it is more advantageous than any other system of governance. Figure 5, why democracy? Yes, in this figure, Robert Dahl shows the benefits of the democracy, the advantages of democracy. Democracy produces desirable consequences, avoiding tyranny, rights, general freedom, self determination, moral autonomy, human development, protecting essential personal interests, political equality, and the two advantages we have discussed just now. In addition, modern democracies produce peace seeking, and prosperity. These are the 10 advantages. So, this chapter comes to an end. I join you back on the Google Meet.